As we move closer to the 30th anniversary of the station, we ask you to help out by visiting us on Twitter, Facebook, or at cklu.ca and following the link to our survey. Thank you on behalf of CKLU.
Overnight Jazz, Tuesday and Thursday nights with CKLU.
Welcome back to the Learning Clinic on CKLU 96.7 FM. I'm your host, Paul, and this afternoon with me in the studio is Hannu Piironen, who's running for the position of City Council in Ward 10. Hannu, we've spent the first part of the show kind of talking about different issues as they've been kind of developing and leading in and kind of coming to the forefront. But in the second half of the show, let's zero in on certain issues that you want to make sure that we talk about before we do run out of time. So
yeah, I just wanted to go back a little bit about accountability and openness. I think it goes to trust and a perceived lack of trust that between the voters and politicians. For me, I don't even like calling myself a politician. I'm just an ordinary person with ideas and who wants to serve the city. But we have to build up trust between the voter and City Hall. So one of the ways is through making politicians accountable, and that there has to be a I'd say a code of ethics that politicians should adhere to. I think previous councils have addressed or gone over this issue, and even created a code of ethics, but it hasn't passed council. So I would hope that in the first few months of a new council that code of ethics would be adopted, that councillors would acknowledge it, read it and sign it and abide by it. And if there are, like any document, it's open to some degree of interpretation, so you have to have an ethics commissioner. It doesn't have to be a full-time position for a small size city, but we should have a person on call, a lawyer, who we could, councillors had any questions or ethical, an ethical dilemma that they would want to discuss, that person would be available to do so. And at the same time, for openness, I think people who have dealings with City Hall, developers and suppliers and that sort of thing, that should be disclosed. I think there should be a lobbyist register, and again, we don't have to get too bogged down with bureaucracy on this. It's just that it's better to that everything is seen to be done in a proper fashion, and that's to build trust. And I think taxpayers deserve that.
is this where we're getting into the ombudsman and the auditor general? Because those are things that are being discussed quite a bit.
But those are actually small issues that have been blown so far out of proportion. They should, again, a new council should be able to deal with those issues in the first 15 minutes of the meeting, and then go on to other things. We have to set the reset button when there's a new council. The ombudsman, it seems to be almost a no-brainer to have the ombudsman office investigate closed-door meetings, because it's there. The fact that there's a problem with the holder of the office, Mr. Marin, has nothing to do with the fact that the office of the ombudsman is a impartial arbitrator or investigator, and we should use it. Mr. Marin's appointment ends in 2015. There's going to be a new ombudsman next year. If some councillors had bad dealings with him, well, that'll be water under the bridge, and we start afresh. As far as the auditor general's office, of course we need an auditor general. But again, you have to separate the person from the office. If there's I don't know Mr. Bigger, and but I know that his reports are, while they're supposed to be I suppose hard hitting, in the sense that they're bringing out problems. If I don't think he's doing his job if he's not really getting down to the nuts and bolts of how the city is run.
So then the ombudsman, the auditor general, it's more about the office and the responsibility than it is about the individual. It should be.
Yes, and I think
Not
we should.
just-
I think we should divide the two, and I think most people would see that they're both useful mechanisms for accountability and transparency.
So then the public perception that the council is looking for an auditor or a ombudsman who's not gonna be as difficult on them, it seems to be missing the point of what that role is
Yeah, they're
supposed to be
getting
about.
personalities that are getting involved.
Right. So you're right. I mean, from an accountability side, who would not want somebody who's gonna be a third party, hopefully an objective third party, who's
Exactly.
confirming basically that the decisions that are being made are
Right.
legitimate and
And
legal.
again, goes down to the trust.
Mhm. And when you get into the legal arena that we have kind of fallen into over the last couple of decades, nobody wants to make a decision on anything, and for fear of litigation. I use the simple example of what we did today, talking about the referendum, probably does not sit with what the actual law says about speaking about the referendum. You're supposed to be registered if you're gonna be speaking in terms of the referendum. And yet, as candidates, the referendum is an issue. And the only person, I believe, the only group that's been registered as a lobbyist that has the legal authority to speak on the referendum questions is the Chamber of Commerce. Now, I've gone and asked the city clerk, do candidates have to be registered on this lobbyist registry? And the answer that comes back from legal counsel is they can't give legal advice. That you have to seek your own legal advice. Even though the city clerk is the one that judges whether you're violating this provision. And so even a simple question of, tell me if I do this and I'm not registered, are you gonna rule that I'm in violation, is we can't give that advice out. you have to get legal counsel. And so we get into this paralysis of inaction, where it's just a matter of, which way you turn.
Yeah.
And so I can see it's gonna be nice to have, and there has to be, whether you're on a school board, whether you're on any kind of a public organization, you have to have somebody who you can turn to and say, well, we are doing things properly because there is a third party who is overseeing what we're doing on your behalf. So it is getting in the way, I think, of a lot of issues that probably should be discussed. I'm not sure, is there any other issues that you have down there before I throw one on the table that keeps coming up?
Well, I suppose this is more of a hypothetical, but let's say we have the Rob's Ford situation in Sudbury or something like that. I think a lot of people say, well, we should have recall legislation that, get a petition and boot the person out of office who is the wrongdoer. Well, I mean, I'm against recall in the sense of redoing an election. I mean, I think once a politician is elected, they're there. You can't have a do-over. You wait till the next election. However, there are circumstances like you can foresee, like what's happening in Toronto. This mayor hasn't been fit to be the mayor for over a year, and there is no mechanism to remove him. He's been stripped of all his powers. Now he's on leave of absence. Now, I would support legislation that across the province that would could be used in these kinds of circumstances. Not because one disagrees with its policies or mayor's policies or a councillor's policies and don't like the decision he made, so let's recall him and have it revoked. No, this is be a case where a person is incapacitated or has committed acts that are egregious, that they lost the ability to govern. It could be through sickness or quasi-criminal or even a blatantly criminal act. Because right now, if a councillor missed three, or any member of council or mayor missed 3 consecutive meetings, then they could be removed from office. So I would have a provision in there that provided that there would be a vote of a super majority, let's say 66% or 75% of a council, that would cause a process to, first of all, suspend the councillor or mayor, and then a panel of 3 Superior Court judges would hold a hearing to within a very short period of time, let's say 30 days, and to hold a hearing and to decide on that person's fitness to hold office, and the sanction would be removal. Now, you think that's a legal, complicated legal process? Well, it's a lot better than what we have now is just limbo. So something could, it could be decided within like 2 months rather than 2 years or wait till the next election. It's kind of ironic, we wouldn't really have these situations, but now that arise very often, but now our terms are 4 years rather than before they were 2 years and then 3 years. So before you could probably afford to wait till the next election, a city like Toronto shouldn't have to be basically rudderless for 2 years. So that's just, that's a kind of an aside, but I think that's one way to that these kind of situations can be addressed.
It gets into the whole area of what a person can legally do and what a person's legally rights are as an individual in a democratic society. And I've had this discussion with, several times about, well, isn't it easier to just cut your staff by 25% and that way you save the money? And I said, well, you can't just cut staff. For one thing, you've got a collective agreement to deal with. For another thing, you've got severance payments, and you have to have a legal right to be able to cut staff. And if you still have to provide the service, you can't just helter-skelter go around and say, well, you're gone, you're gone, you're gone. The people have rights, and there's it could cost you an awful lot more if you start arbitrarily terminating people without proper reason. And I can see what's happening in the Rob Ford situation where even a councillor in a ward, if council wanted to suspend or sanction the particular councillor, I don't think that you could be suspended or prevented from coming to council meetings, because you wouldn't be infringing on the rights of the councillor, you'd be infringing on the rights of his constituents. And I can see where to develop a process where the democratic rights of an individual could be removed based on judgment of a panel, a tribunal, you would run into situations of whether the person had actually been convicted of the things that they've been accused of. And even Rob Ford's situation, I don't think he's been convicted of a whole lot of wrong.
Well, that's why I'm saying it's some behaviors actually don't necessarily rise to the level of criminal behavior, but it affects your ability to do your job.
If you can prove that it has affected.
Well, that's why I'm saying.
Yeah.
So first of all, it would have
an
to
interesting.
be, yeah.
It's an interesting debate. Because you are infringing on a person's rights.
Yeah, that's why it's a judicial process.
Yeah.
This is an arbitrary process, and it's not a political. That's why I want to, in my suggestion, to get it out of the political arena, and that's why it has to be a super majority. It has so the clear wish of, and if let's say the judges decided that it didn't rise to this level of behavior to warrant removal from office, that would be the end of it.
Yeah, no, it would be interesting for sure. I mean, it's a huge.
But there just has to be some mechanism, because people are very frustrated that they can't believe that she's still there.
And I'm pretty sure it would have to be a provincial.
Oh yeah, it would be
directive, so it would have to be passed by the province
Mhm.
in order to be enforced by the municipality. What about the issue of the super sports complexes, the multi-use facility, the multi-pad facilities, the huge arts, cultural, recreation facilities that people want to see us develop in Sudbury? are you hearing much interest about that? We hear people
Well,
bringing
I
it
hear,
up all the time.
yeah, being from the downtown area, I think the buzz more is about a new arena downtown. I think the multi-pad issues are more in the valley, I think, it's not true, or?
I think they're looking, what I'm hearing is they'd like to see a large complex where you've got 5 or 6 arenas in one spot, plus you've got the ability to host large events like 5, 6, 7, 10,000 people in a facility, and a swimming pool complex. When you go down south, they've got these multi-use year-round facilities that are more than just hockey rinks. That they're actually community centers where you put everything up. We know that there are private-public partnerships that can get involved with these. And there seems to be quite a push that we try to do something like this.
Yeah. Sometimes I have a problem with private, public, because the private gets all the benefits, and the public gets the losses, if there are losses. So I'm very leery about that. If it's a feasible private enterprise operation, they should be able to do it on their own. But going to the arena, for example, I think there is a need for a new arena downtown. I think that's going to be it's past its best before date. It was built in 1953. It's a crumbling piece of infrastructure. As we were alluding to, roads. This is another part of the infrastructure deficit. So I think that should be a priority of a new council. These mega complexes, I must say, I'm not too on top of it. I've heard that they were working on a double pad facility in Chelmsford. But I didn't know it was a part of a feeling that it was a swimming pool and everything else.
Yeah, it seems to be that the movement is, if we're going to develop anything, or we're gonna put any money into something, it should be something that would be able to accommodate a number of different activities and even be able to generate revenue for.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that might be good, but I'm also afraid of centralizing things too much too. I'd like to see the outlying communities get their fair share. And they were able to run their arenas fine before amalgamation. I can't see why they can't do it now. I think cities should try to support them as much as they can, but also encourage more volunteerism in the community involvement.
So you like the Community Action Network?
Oh, definitely. But I'd like to see a mechanism that the communities can basically take over their own recreational facilities and run them in their own best interests without being under the city's control.
Think that's possible?
Yes. I think there's ways to work it, and we have to strike up a committee to see how it can be done at the community level, you know, the nuts and bolts and, but, if we can, and if there's a desire from the communities to run their own facilities, I mean, of course, that's the first step. If they don't want to, well, that's a dead letter. But I'm under the impression that, the local, communities would like to be able to, have a big say, in their recreation facilities, rather than having them closed down and centralized.
Yeah, interesting. I can see as we get closer to the election, we're almost out of time now, but I can see as we get closer into the August, September, that we're probably gonna have a number of shows that are strictly on specific issues, because it seems as if a lot of these issues are kind of coming forward, and there's certain ones that are being talked about more often than others, and it's gonna be a matter of the candidates being able to sit down and express what their perception of the problems and the challenges and how they feel like they would like to approach it. So I can see as we move on and we get beyond the general type of interview or kind of trying to cover most of the issues, and but we're gonna have to start zeroing in on certain specific ones, and I mean, we've touched on a couple that we will definitely be addressing. In our final few minutes, is there anything that we've missed that you definitely want to at least leave a couple comments
Well,
with?
I'd like to make a comment that I'm on the library board, I'm the chair of the
Okay.
library board.
Okay, excellent. The library is an important part of our community now, for sure.
And we're in the process of, we're in a feasibility stage, planning stage, and to build a new main library in Sudbury. That would be a world-class facility, I'd say, but would be a showpiece for the city. Again, the library was built in about 1953, about the same time as the arena. So I think that, and they're both showing their age, but we had the civic vision back in 1953 to build both an arena and a library at the same time, and I think that we can do the same in the next term of council, or at least set the ball in motion to do that. So I'm very excited to be part of the process, and it's very early in the game, but we've had a really good response. We've had an open house showing the present main library. We had surveys done. We had over 800 responses and 400 full responses. This was a very extensive survey. It wasn't a 5-minute checkoff survey. Anybody who put their mind to the survey would have taken about 25 to 30 minutes. So, and it was all, there were very positive comments. I think they're getting good feedback from the community, and it's something that has to be championed. And if I get on council, I certainly will be a champion for the new library.
That's great. Hannu Piironen, thank you for being on the show today on CKLU 96.7 FM, the Learning Clinic Meet the Candidates radio show. Again, we've covered an awful lot of topics. The interview will be available on thelearningclinic.ca in its entirety. It maybe linked from your website. People will be able to get it through a couple of Facebook sites. And the whole idea is that over the course of the next several months, we try to have almost all of the councillors coming in, all the candidates for council coming in, so that we have a kind of a virtual meet the candidates